Could you describe your company and some of its history?
ABB Concise was founded 22 years ago. I acquired a small contact lens distribution company, and since then we've been very fortunate to be able to develop the company to the #1 contact lens distributor, servicing over 16,000 independent optometrists throughout the country with all their contact lens needs.
So could you tell us why you wanted to own your own business?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I didn't really want to own the business. That wasn't the onus for me acquiring the company at the time. What I had seen is the opportunity in the marketplace for several different reasons, but I thought that due to the particularly the disposable contact lenses, that supply chain and distribution was going to become very, very important. Disposables really converted the previous contact lens business from a patients were fundamentally getting a pair of lenses once every 14 months to now getting 3 and 4 and 5 shipments of contact lenses annually. So for me, I saw the opportunity in helping practitioners to supply their patients contact lenses. Today, 34% of our entire volume goes directly to patients' homes or offices on behalf of our 16,000 doctors.
Is it realistic to start a practice right out of school?
You know, I think that it depends on how you structure and plan anything in life. I work in 5-year blocks, and for me, it's always been a very successful formula because when I came out of school, I told myself I was going to own a practice in 5 years, and I made that happen. And then I said I would own a second location in the next 5 years, and I have another plan for the next. And I think that what it does is it holds me accountable to me more than anyone else. It's so important to remember that it's not about how fast you build a practice, it's about making sure that you have the necessary tools in place, the knowledge base, financials, family support, that you're well grounded, and that you understand the sacrifices you'll be making. To do that right out of school, unfortunately, today is harder than ever, because it may provide you with a difficult situation, an opportunity for making money, but at the same time, maybe you will find yourself living in the wrong town, or maybe you took an opportunity because the practice was for sale, or you started up, but you didn't really think through the financial aspects of it, really making a living in those early years. You've got a lot of debt, I'm sure, as I did, and you're thinking maybe I can budget this, or maybe if I'm optimistic I can see enough patients to make ends meet. But I want to make sure that you look at the first 5 years as your honeymoon period in optometry. I want you to really be careful about making too many commitments without knowing who you are and how you'll practice and what your interests will be in the field. I think if you throw an anchor down too quickly, you may find yourself saying, you know what, I really don't like, what Mike Rothschild refers to as spinning and grinning, which is just doing refractive eye exams. Maybe you decide that you just want to do something completely different within the field. So if you're sure you want to be in private practice, you're sure you want to open your own practice, it doesn't hurt to plan for a year or 2 or 3, make some money, make sure that you don't get trapped into a situation where the money's so good that your lifestyle changes so dramatically you cannot let it go. Like in making that much money in the first couple of years as being addicted to drugs, it's really tough to come off of that drug. So I would put away money. I would live as if you were making half as much as you're making and put the rest away. I would refrain from making big purchases in those first couple of years that are going to tie you down to a mortgage or a big car payment. I know it's hard, but you truly should live in a modest fashion for a couple of years just to get yourself ready for opening your own practice and the practice of your dreams. Is it realistic to open up within 5 years? Absolutely. I think it's very doable. I would in fact encourage you, because I think one of the sweetest pleasures that any optometrist can have in the profession is that sense of accomplishment, that when you pull up in front of your own practice and you walk through your own doors and you know that the hard work you're putting in is worth it because you're building something for yourself, you're investing in yourself. And as my father's always said, he's an OBGYN that retired just last year, but truly there is no better investment than investing in yourself, whether that's emotionally, physically, or in business. So take time, really plot the course, understand exactly where you want to live and where your family will be, and really focus on the first 5 years as those years where you plan things properly, you take your time, and then you hit a home run, as opposed to rushing into a decision. I hope that.
What are a couple of your early mistakes, and how would you avoid them?
Wow, there was plenty of early mistakes. I would tell you that do a lot more research and probably slow down my decision making. Early on, I would make decisions, business decisions, without thoroughly looking into them. And what I've realized over time, that if you have a very good idea today and it's still a good idea 6 months or a year later, it's probably still a good idea. When I was younger, starting out, I would just constantly be making changes of which, if I would have just thought about it a little bit more, done some more research, probably would have been better than making a lot of the mistakes that I did make. So I think the only advice there is slow down and be more strategic, I think.
What were your initial expectations about opening a practice, and how did they turn out?
I actually had some pretty realistic expectations. I wasn't just green to optometry. I had been managing a couple office locations for several years before I opened up cold. And I had some realistic expectations. I knew it wasn't going to be super busy in the beginning. I knew it was going to be a lot of hard work and long hours. And my expectations in reality kind of matched up pretty well. I mean, when I first opened, I was there about 7 days a week, 8 to 8, determining what hours I needed to be open to serve my community. And, we whittled those hours down. I wasn't there seeing patients all the time, but I was always there trying to either stay busy and improve the business by working on it, or by studying and learning things that I felt that I needed to learn to make the business run the way I wanted it to. There was definitely a lot of skills that I thought I could use some fine-tuning and improvement on, and when it was slow in the beginning, I took the time to do that, and it seemed to work well. Well, biggest disappointments, I have to say I really didn't have too many big disappointments. I guess one of the disappointments is that nobody is going to care about your practice and your business as much as you do, and it's very rare when you get a superstar kind of employee who cares and runs it like they own it. I think that those people ultimately end up going on to have their own business, but it's something that, as far as disappointment goes, trying to find staff that is dedicated and cares even just half as much as you has been a pretty big challenge. And I think if you talk to most business owners, they're going to say that staffing is probably one of their number one areas of pain in the butt. So I guess initially staffing was one of my biggest disappointments. Got a great team now, though, of course.
What's something you wish someone would have told you when you started your business?
I guess that would be just to say yes and don't pass up on opportunities, and actually look for opportunities. There's opportunities out there, and when they do get presented to you, definitely make sure you say yes. And I always ask myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think once you view it through that filter about what's the absolute worst thing that can happen, you're going to really see that there's not a whole lot of downside to saying yes to these opportunities. So if I can just give you that one piece of advice, it'd be just to say yes to things.
All right, a little bit of humor. My father, who's been an incredible inspiration for me my entire career, he always says to me, my sister, and my younger brother, he always said, marry the right person, the most important decision of your life. So I really hope that we can use that as a side note, but marrying the right person is truly the most important decision of your life. But the business decision I wish somebody had said to me right when I graduated, and it happened a few years after my graduation. The story is I was sitting in a doctor's office. I was an associate in a practice, and this wonderful older gentleman was sitting in the chair, and he looked at me and he said, "Let me ask you something, Dr. K. Why aren't you a practice owner already?" And I said, I want to be, and I'm just sort of waiting a little bit of time just to see if this works out for me, if I can maybe be a partner. I've given myself a couple of years to figure it out, and then I'm going to make a move. And he said, great, I'm glad you have a plan, but a couple of years makes me nervous. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I learned a tough lesson in my lifetime, and that is never trade time for money. And his point was that you cannot hold down a job and say, I just want to make some money right now, and maybe in a couple of years I'll do something, because money will come and go. But your years and your viable years of practicing and making decisions that are going to be important for your entire life, those are limited. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. So it was important to me. It was a great lesson, and it came a few years late, maybe. But at the end of the day, it made me, put my head down and start working hard and start pursuing my dreams. And I've always been very fond of that advice. So I hope.
So if I had one piece of advice, I would say that, and I learned this the hard way. I, like many business owners, probably did not invest in talented people early enough in the life cycle of the business. So if the tendency is that you can't afford, in the case of an optometrist, it might be an office manager or someone like that. But I would tell you today, knowing what I do know, the right person can make a huge difference early on in a business cycle. And today I would tell you, you probably can't afford to make that decision early enough. So it would be get better people, meaning higher level people probably paying more than you feel comfortable with. The right person pays for themselves in a hurry.
Actually, just to expand on that, you were saying when you go to hire somebody, you invest in a premium. You decide to pay them a little bit more. What are some of the qualities you would look for in a person you were hiring? If you were wanting to expand, what would set somebody apart and make them a worthwhile candidate?
That's an excellent question. The interview process, what I've learned over time, also is how to interview people. Early on in my career, the interview would be something, a 1-hour interview. What I've learned over time, much like making strategic decisions, we don't hire anyone until we meet them at least 3 times. And specifically to a task, our best success is with someone that has not only the intelligence and the work ethic to execute what the job title is, but some experience directly related to what we're trying to get done. So the ideal candidate would be someone that, in the case of an optometrist's office, that has run and managed a very successful office. That would be the ideal scenario. So that you don't have to necessarily invest in the training. That individual already comes with a clear vision of what needs to be done. And that would be worked out through an interview process where, in the case of hiring an office manager, in the interview process, get into the details, much like, say, what would you do within my practice, very specifically. And you'll know in short order if that's the type of person. And you can't spend enough time with a person in an interview process. These are very important people that you're going to be working with, 40 plus hours a week. And the interview process, investing 3 and 4 or 5 hours before you hire a crucial person is a really good investment in your time and energy, because it's that important.
I would always interview people year-round. I would hire good quality people. I would even argue you should be overstaffed with good people and basically let go of the weakest link periodically. I promise you that no business can survive when you have someone who ruins the patient experience. So if there is someone in your office that you just so dependent on, but that person isn't really buying into your culture, that person is causing you significant problems. Growth stunt. That person is probably causing some loss of patience, probably holding you back from doing some high-level work. So first thing is hiring based on need. So don't wait till somebody leaves or you fire someone to start looking. And And the thing that I would say has been the most profound finding for me has been the need to create a culture in the practice prior to planning your future. I think it's essential that you know who you are and you know what the practice stands for. But it's really important to get the people that work for you and become part of that family to understand the culture of the family. Now, it may seem superficial to just say the word culture. So what I really mean are those key core values that any business should have and stand by. If everyone is on board, if they truly understand the work that is expected of them, but most importantly, if they buy into the culture of your business, what will happen is they will start to make decisions that are more aligned with the practice. I've been to so many practices as a consultant where I've seen the staff members making decisions based on things like money and not necessarily the best interests of the patient, sometimes to a fault, too much of an interest in the well-being of the practice. When we create a practice that has a rich understanding of culture and who they are, you'll start to notice that the patient's best interest becomes the priority. And when you have a solid foundation, when everybody believes in your message and what you want to do as a care provider, then the staff starts to behave more like you and less in a way that is defensive and less likely to make bad decisions for the patient. Now, it's not a perfect world and we all make bad decisions, but it's critically important to focus on who the practice is and why you do what you do. And you start that at the very beginning, day one, when you're trying to decide where you'll be when it's all said and done. You really truly want to make sure the culture of the practice is in the conversation of your vision and mission and your positioning statement, what it is that you want people to know about you. I would argue the most important thing is, who are you and why do you do what you do? Not, I want to give you great quality of life with good vision, but what you do is directly related to who you are. So you want to talk about, your love for people, for vision, for delivering great vision. That way it's about you and your belief system and not about the product, which is great glasses, great contacts, great vision, whatever it is that you do. So that's probably the one area I would pay most attention to.
The number one thing all organizations, regardless of size, and I would also applies to a three-person optometric practice, is communication. And as the individual in charge of the operation, it's critically important that not only the individuals know and understand who and what your values are and what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. That can include things on how you're going to give back to society, and allow them to have input and live and participate in that. And we clearly, the individuals that have not been able to continue to work here, it's because of clash of cultural things. It's not because they're not capable of doing the job. It's that our values were different, and they didn't believe in necessarily, we didn't align on a personal basis. So you have to hire to those traits and values, so it's a two-way street, and it evolves over time. Culture evolves. The culture within a four-person practice will evolve to something different, hopefully better, as you go to 12, 20, 30, 60 individuals, right? It just constantly evolves. As the leader of the organization, your job is to make sure everybody understands what your vision on the values and the vision for the organization is.
Finding the right buttons to push with your employees to get them on board and supportive of your vision is always extremely tough if you don't lay it out there for them. I think with my team right now, they all know what my vision is of Park Slope Eye, and they're all on board with it, and they do work to make sure that we're all working towards building and supporting that vision. Some of the ways that we do that is through meetings, is through them seeing me involved in other aspects of my career. It's for me keeping them involved with the decision-making process, at least running things, through them, seeing what their opinion is of them. So keeping them actively involved. I don't really rely too much on the team to be the visionaries and come up with ways, but I do rely on them to kind of filter and help give feedback on ideas that I do have. And we're always working on stuff too. One of the things that my team's really good at is fine-tuning. So if we have an idea, we're testing it out, they'll give me really good feedback and we'll fine-tune it and improve that idea so next time it's even better.
So for the most part, if the culture of a particular practice will be very, very consumer focused, and the consumer is always right, as two of the obvious things that a lot of people, but practicing it is a little difficult, which means if you really believe in that, you have to allow anybody in the practice to give away up to X amount of dollars. It's not uncommon for everybody in the practice to be able to say up to $35 you're able to do whatever needs to be done. That means ship something overnight to some patient who wasn't whose frame order was delayed, or a redo on lenses, or whatever the case is. But where I see is you have to make it a living process and not just talk to it and then not allow people to practice it. And I think that's the biggest challenge that I see. And you certainly see world-class brands like Nordstrom's, as everybody knows about, and even Zappos online, Amazon, that regardless who you're speaking to, those people have the ability to appease you, meaning return it at any expense, which also applies to our business. So you got to make sure the policies are aligned with what you're attempting to accomplish.
With the difference between older and younger ODs, have you seen a difference between the age groups that are adopting more online-based distribution?
So the adoption is not necessarily to the practitioner as much as to the staff, because the majority of the order, over 90% of the orders, are done by the staff. So certainly the younger the staff, the more online ordering. Our business is 74% online today. There's very clear advantages for doing that. Order consolidation, reduction of cost, and the technology allows you to commit. So that means from your practice, from your even mobile device, you can order lenses for any patient, and you can tell the patient's in stock and it's going to be shipped.
Oh. So you said that 74% of your orders are coming online. How have you guys handled the change from more paper and phone call orders to the online orders?
It's been a very natural evolution for us. I think the biggest change is that we've seen from technology and online is that we've empowered almost 10,000 practices with technology that allows their patients to order from their doctor's sites. And the biggest thing we've seen there is 34% of all of those orders are ordered after practice hours. So after 9 p.m. and before 8 in the morning, 34%, Sundays. So we've virtually, what we've made is the practices a virtual 24/7 operation.
Now, how'd you guys do that? I mean, most optometrists want to have their own website.
It is their website.
It is their website?
We just embedded the technology into their website.
Okay.
So I would go to your website, and the portion that says click here for contact lenses is when we would embed the technology. The differentiator is to be ahead, just like in any industry, of the crowd. So the competitors to the independents are large organizations that historically lag from a technology, being able to execute things. So your ability to adopt newer technology faster is I would say, something that everybody should look into.
How do you build an online presence?
one of the most important things in building an online presence is to be responsive. There's nothing says you don't care like not responding to a negative review. If you kind of just ignore it and don't do anything about it, what message are you sending to people that see that? The best thing to do is definitely respond to those negative messages. What people don't actually know is that I respond to every single message, good, bad, or indifferent. The good messages I usually respond solely in private channels. I'll use either email, phone call, text, or like Yelp's messaging platform itself to respond. The negative ones, I definitely give them the opportunity to correspond with me and solve things and work things out, behind closed doors first, and then we'll post a public message accordingly afterwards. Sometimes people are very responsive, when you reach out to them. Sometimes they just ignore you. And either way, though, there should be something posted publicly in response to that negative review. It's very important to do that because you want to make sure that people know that you do care, and if bad things do happen, that you are there to take the proper steps to have the best possible resolution. One of the things that I wish I could have done while I was in school was utilize social media well. It wasn't around anywhere near the same capacity that it is nowadays, and I think that you can use social media even while you're in school to make sure that you're building bonds of loyalty with your patients and also getting in the proper practice that you do need to have with social media to run it effectively once you have your own practice. So I guess if I was you guys sitting in school nowadays, I'd start a Facebook page for intern Bazan, and I would have that being populated with the same kind of content that I would have hoped to put out if I had my own practice. And I would also try to stay in communication with the patients that I did see at the university. You never know how those relationships can take off or lead to other new sources of patients as well. So get out there and start to use social media professionally already while you're still in school. I think it would make a huge difference.
What is one area you would tell a new business owner to pay most attention to?
In the order of priority, I would tell you the measuring of all the critical points within the accounting or the financing of the company. Critical, you never run out of cash or availability of credit. Rule number one in all business. You have to have financial control in any business. Particularly starting out, it's even that much more crucial. What I'd recommend for young practitioners is to spend some time and have either associates or friends of yours that are accountants, that are familiar with your space, that accountants that do other practices returns or even dentist office or other medical offices are extremely helpful, or individuals that are professional managers that have profit and loss responsibility can be of tremendous help, and pick their brains and spend the time so you set up a process within the practice that you understand at any given time where you're at from a cash flow standpoint.
If you put away some money early on and you're able to open a practice and not be so dependent on making a good income, I think you'll feel comfortable much sooner. But if you found yourself in a situation like many of us where you took on a lot of debt and you were depending on the practice to give you an income, unfortunately you'll have to live a very modest life, and you have to take very little away from the practice for about 3 years, maybe 5. Many practitioners will moonlight elsewhere to make some income, and that helps. But of course, you take your attention away from your practice. But I think if you look at the country and you look at those doctors who have started up or bought their own practices, they will tell you year 3 is a pretty important year. It's where they start to see some return. Year 5 really feels quite good. And I think it also depends on how much debt and how fast you pay off your debt. So that's a tough question to know the right answer to. Depends on demographics, depends on location, depends on your finances, but pretty safe bet is to say 3 to 5 years. Most of us feel like we've made it. So be patient.
I think keeping your costs down is very important no matter what stage of the game you're in. I think initially when I first opened up, my cost of goods were as good as anybody who has been in practice even for years working on cost of goods, because I was with an alliance, Vision Source actually, and Vision Source was able to guarantee me that I was getting the lowest cost of goods on equipment and product, and it was something that was awesome right from the start. So I highly encourage you to make sure that you're doing what it takes to find the best deals on things, whether that's joining an alliance like Vision Source or being a ruthless negotiator on your own, which is something that I just don't have in me to do.
So what are some advantages for us ODs into belonging into a buying or distribution group?
Sure. So the optical industry is no different than other industries in that it's about size and scale. So buying groups and distributors like ourselves buy on behalf of, in our case, 16,000 members. So as opposed to an individual doctor who may not have the buying clout to get the discounts necessary. So we highly recommend working with buying groups, particularly coming out of school, to optimize the best discounts you can, and distributors like us. The manufacturers also support all different types of new in practice programs for practitioners that, regardless of age or experience, go into their own practice or a partner in their own in an independent practice for the first time. And we highly recommend taking advantage of those programs also.
Ups and downs in the market are inevitable. How can we as ODs and business owners stay on top of the market changes so that we stay in sync with what the customers and patients want and what the market conditions allow?
So traditionally, because the average practice can exceed normal market conditions, what we've seen is one of the biggest benefits that our industry has, and practitioners will tell you it's a benefit. Some practitioners tell you it's a benefit. Others will disagree. Obviously, is the medical managed care portion of it. So we do not. The optical industry does not go through the highs and lows that the economy does, because more than half of the business of the patients are covered by some type of coverage. So that makes it relatively consistent compared to other businesses, right? So what we've seen in even the worst recession that we've had in the last 50 years, which started in 2007, the business, the optical business in aggregate went down 2 to 3%, and most recently is up 1 or 2%. But when you compare that to other industries,
Right.
those swings were 20 and 40%. The car industry, real estate business, banking, those were huge swings. So the good news is, though we do have ups and downs, the amplitude is really truncated because of healthcare insurance and managed care. That said, and the fact that the average practice is such a microcosm, and it is of business, you can exceed, even in those times, we have practices that are up 20 and 30%, right? While the industry is down 1% or flat.
Do you see a difference in ordering trends between successful practices, those that are at the top 20% versus those at the bottom 20%?
There's absolutely a huge difference. And the entire industry, and not only this industry, other industries chart this. So in the optical business, the early innovators, which are defined as the top 5 or 6% of the practices, are always cutting edge, from the equipment that's being used, to the sales and marketing, to optimizing their website, to the dispensing of the newer, better lenses and contact lenses. And they're the first ones on, the newest, and that takes a lot of risk, obviously, and a lot more energy to do that. But that differentiation equates to a different experience for the patients coming in. They know every time they come in it's going to be something different, something new, and that translates into a better practice and a cutting-edge, forward-thinking practice. So in the contact lenses, it's those practices are always the first ones on the new technology, and they over-index in whatever the newest technology is. They index in more specialty fits, and that translates into being able to charge more because the differentiation related to being ahead of the rest of the industry. You can charge more for your products and services.
Well, there is a cost for risk.
Absolutely. There's a return for risk.
Yeah. What about the bad habits of the bottom 20%? What have you seen those guys do?
So the tendency, the bottom 20% are somewhat disengaged. For the most part, that group is made up of individuals that are the practices are aging for the most part, and just they're the exact opposite of individuals investing in their practice. For the most part, they are set in their ways, not able to change, not investing in the practice. The patient experience at that practice is totally different. Normally, older practitioner who's thinking about retiring versus the next 10 or 15 years.
Breaking into an established industry of sorts for you guys, how do you make that niche? How do you carve yourself and make sure you're able to fill those needs?
So
or create a need.
Early on, we didn't know enough. We probably wouldn't do what we've done, but we have today the practitioners. We have a reputation that allows us to, and people will trust us in order to. But what we're being sensitive to is making sure that whatever we do creates a tremendous amount of value, I think understanding the business and the business needs and being able to look forward and clearly see where the future of the industry is going is something that I think drives the organization and the vision. Being able to tell the industry that based on data and information is the best way that we partner with people in order to help change the industry.
Now, taking that and shrinking that idea to a new graduate as an OD, business rules are the same. I want to go into a community which is and has an established optometric base, and I'm assuming that most of the needs are being filled. But if I'm looking, how would what aspects would I look at that would make it seem like a feasible task to do?
That's a good question. So what I've seen work extremely well, and depending on where and the demographics related to the practice, I've seen practitioners go in growing communities, and they grew with the communities, and that's a very strategic thing that they've done because few will do that. But you've got to be clear that the community you're investing in has the favorable demographics working in your direction. In a more mature demographic area, I would probably look into partnering with an established practice, a successful practice, and earn my way into that practice. And I think it's very important from day one that the practitioner or practitioners in that practice value what you're trying to accomplish as an individual, meaning that if in fact you want to become a partner within that practice and or eventually take over that practice, I would have those discussions from day one.
Go. What's a common mistake new eye doctors make?
Avoid getting overconfident. I think it's so common to see a young practitioner or young business owner have a couple years of success and then experience this phenomenon that happens where you end up thinking you're better off on an island, that you know everything. I think we've all gone through that, and it hurts to see a young practitioner go through that, where they say, I'm better than most, that I get it more than other people do. I don't need consulting, which is fine, but I don't need to read either, or the way I do it is just fine. It's so hard to imagine that anyone would do this, but it happens to almost everyone, especially when you turn the corner and you start making some money. The thing is, what you don't know may be costing you so much in growth. If you could take advantage of that young momentum, that early momentum that you have, and really truly reach out and work with other doctors, work with a group of people, create a study group, and really take your practice to an accelerated growth pattern, the upside is unbelievable. So don't be that person who says, I've got a $500,000 practice in 5 years and I'm happy and I don't need anybody's advice, because doctors have a habit of doing that, and it hurts because you're learning plateaus over time. Relying too heavily on your optician to manage the optical side of your business, I think there's a real crime in advocating that responsibility to someone else. That's so much of your business, 40, 50, 60% of the revenue of the practice, and we rely on someone with experience, per se, to manage it, to buy, to sell, to reconcile, to manage personnel. Listen, at the end of the day, the business is yours, and as a responsible CEO, you can delegate responsibilities, but you have to have frequent reporting from the people in those departments, and those reports should ultimately give you an opportunity to make decisions. Those decisions should not be made by anyone other than you. Now, I'm not asking for you to make every little decision, but certainly you should have checks and balances. So frame buying, lab purchases, reconciling of your statements, making sure that you get your due credits. Those things cannot be given off to someone else. That responsibility is too great, and it costs you too much. And frankly, I've learned that the hard way. But you live and learn. So make sure that people that work for you, not work on their own, and treat the business as if you're not part of their decision-making process.
What should a new practice owner work on most at first?
I think new business owners should focus most on having great word of mouth. You're going to have a very limited patient flow when you first start, and it's important that you make impressions on those patients where they're going to be bringing you in new business and making sure that they can't help but tell their friends and family that they need to see you as their eye doctor and make sure they go to your practice. With social media nowadays, it's even easier to get the word out and to kind of take that word of mouth they would have exchanged through their peer network and their friend network and now just blow it up on their social network. So building a business from a cold startup now, if you're embracing social media, is one of the things that you can do faster and accelerated compared to back in the day when we didn't have these tools. So I think that new business owners should definitely focus on creating exceptional and wowing experiences in the office and letting that word of mouth help build their business for them. So it's about creating advocates.
What books would you recommend for young doctors to read?
I love reading business books now, for some reason, more than almost anything else. Early on in my career, you couldn't make me read a book about optometry, or the business side of it, because I was so focused on starting a family or building my business, and I thought that I knew everything. It was a few years into my career that someone put a book in my hand, and it was probably the watershed moment, I think, in my career when I read Good to Great. And I think that if I had to rate a book that is number one all time for me, and I think many business gurus will say this, but Good to Great by Jim Collins is truly the best business book out there for anyone looking to open a business or take a business to the next level or grow a large business if you wanted to. It really applies across the spectrum. So I will say that Jim Collins has produced lots of great books, and his next two chapters to Good to Great, How the Mighty Fall, which was a follow-up to Good to Great, because several of those companies struggled and failed during the recent economic crisis, but many of them made it, and he teaches you the lessons learned from that. And then the latest edition, which I think is maybe one of the best books that I've read recently, is Great by Choice, and it actually highlights those companies that have not only survived but thrived through tough economic times, in fact several times over. The insight there is incredible. It teaches you how a great leader, and really what makes a great leader is not what you would expect. These 10Xers in this book, these people that not only survived but took their practice, took their business to at least tenfold above the market, all had very similar characteristics, and you'd be surprised by the read. I promise you that. It's a pretty much of an eye opener for me and many business leaders out there who lecture, who do consulting work. I think maybe we've had it wrong. So a great read. And then outside of Jim Collins, the only other read that I think may be so pertinent to the early careers of those students out there and young practitioners is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, the owner of Zappos. And I think the book pretty much highlights the essence of belief system driving successful business. And those of you who know me know that I harp on culture more than almost anything else. I believe it is the key to success, is understanding your beliefs and how those are going to play a role in your patient care activities and your ownership of your business. So if you get a chance, read those.
So, what are the overall keys to success?
It's the fundamentals that I think that we've already talked about. That'll be some financially savvy, stay ahead from a technology standpoint, invest in the practice, create a culture that is attractive not only to employees but your patients. And there's no shortcut to hard work over a long period of time.